What's up, everybody? This is your boy Chainsaw. Listen, Republicans just seem to love rate replacement theory. Rand Paul's never heard of it. Francis and friends can't seem to figure it out. Tucker Carlson's going to do a little dance for us. And Ben Shapiro, I'm not even really sure what Ben Shapiro's take is at this point. That guy talks in circles. I don't even think he knows where he stands when it comes to what's been happening in the last couple of days and over the weekend. So, look, we got a lot to discuss. So let's just jump right into it.
And I believe without a shadow of a doubt, this is the last election. This is it. This is the last election. And the reason why I say that, David, is because it's a math problem. It's a math problem of demographics in a changing United States. And if you look at the numbers of people who vote and who lives in the country and who Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton want to bring into the country, this is the last election when we even have a chance to vote for somebody who will stand up for godly moral principles. This is it. Hillary Clinton, I'm not judging her spiritually or where she's at, but we know where she's going to come down on Supreme Court justices. She's pro-Planned Parenthood. She's for everything that I'm against.
And that's probably a good thing. The Jerry Falwell crowd, it just loves talking about great replacement theory, but while some conservatives are trying to distance themselves from it, others are just doubling down on the rhetoric. We're going to take a closer look at some examples of statements made by some of the most maniacal and destructive right-wing talking heads who undoubtedly will continue pushing this agenda, followed by some examples of how others are trying to maneuver their way out of the hot seat. And this comes from the 13th of April. We're going to take a look at real quick a Newsweek article, Tucker Carlson replacement segment praised by white nationalists, attacked on Newsmax. Again, 413 from Newsweek. Fox Opinion host Tucker Carlson has been praised by white nationalists and criticized on Newsmax segment for promoting the replacement conspiracy on his weekday television program, Tucker Carlson Tonight. Carlson, one of Fox News' most popular hosts, first touted the conspiracy theory last Thursday, claiming that Democrats support a surge in immigration as part of a plan to shore up support for their political party. He claimed that Democrats view immigrants to be more obedient voters from the third world. After significant backlash, Carlson doubled down on his remarks during his Monday evening show, saying that in order to win and maintain power, Democrats plan to change the population of the country. Nick Fuentes, y'all remember that guy? White supremacist Holocaust denier, tweeted his support for Carlson's comments, but said the anchor should have gone further, criticizing him for suggesting that his remarks were not about race. Of course, replacement migration is obviously racial, and Tucker probably understands that, but is unwilling to say it, maybe because he would get fired if he did, Fuentes wrote. Yeah, it's just disgusting stuff. Now, even before the Buffalo shooting took place, the ADL sent a letter to Fox News urging them to part ways with Tucker Carlson because of his continued push of the sublime racist rhetoric, likely in the belief that it would stochastically lead to violence or terrorism, which it ultimately has. Now, the next clip I'm going to show you is from a show hosted. This is not what you're going to find on other independent media channels. The next clip I'm going to show you is from a show hosted by the wife of Pentecostal megachurch evangelical Francis Swaggart, Jimmy Swaggart's wife. Of course, he was defrocked for his recreation in the late 80s and early 90s from his original church. They actually, this show is broadcast on satellite TV, on a broadcast network that is owned by Jimmy Swaggart and Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, of course paid for by contributions from their followers. Now, their business model is a lot like a George Carlin joke gone horribly wrong, But here's Francis and friends telling their devout worshipers and viewers that it isn't about race. It's just about something else, I guess. So let's take a look here.
Yeah.
You know, like my concern is, I want to see people go to the polls to vote for agenda, not to vote for or against the color of your skin.
Well, our president has promised the world.
Not for agenda, or for agenda, not to vote based on the color of one's skin.
And especially that's what they're voting on right now with the spending. He's willing to spend the next 20, 30 generations worth of money to buy the power today because he wants to change everything.
Let's look at the agenda, Mike. The agenda is to destroy this country.
Let's look at the agenda.
Yeah, I'm just looking here, spending all that money.
Right.
I'm trying.
Spending all that money. Let's look at the agenda. It's not about the color of a person's skin.
Trying to get people. We've got to elect people to represent us in Congress and the Senate, and the state level, the parish level, whatever office that they are running for.
Parish level. Okay.
Represent us that have some values, and they're not pushing race. They're pushing agenda.
Right.
No one looks at the agenda.
Look at the issues, right.
Look at the issues.
That's what's concerning me.
Okay.
We have got, I just saw it, flashed up on my phone. They say it's 85,000 more immigrants on their way from Haiti to the United States of America. We cannot sustain that.
And there it is, folks. About that. If that doesn't just make your skin crawl, then I don't know what does. And the fact that these people are tax exempt should be enough to give my viewers at least a light stroke. Wow. So Tucker Carlson last night was trying his hardest to play defense. At his show last night, I was just shocked at how well, he tried to weasel his way out of blame for inciting this kind of stochastic violence over the last several years that ultimately led to, at least in regards to Buffalo, the events that we saw over the weekend. Now, we'll take a look at what he said last night regarding the shooting and the shooter. Take a listen to this, folks.
He was an 18-year-old called Peyton Gendron. Gendron was mentally ill. Everyone around him knew that, including his teachers and the local police. Less than a year ago, Gendron was committed to a mental hospital after threatening to murder his classmates at a school graduation ceremony. So on Saturday, after he made good on his long-standing threat to open fire into a crowd, Gendron left an 180-page letter that he said would explain his motives. You've probably heard this document described as a racist manifesto. But that's not quite right. It's definitely racist, bitterly so. Gendron reduces people to their skin color. That's the essence of racism, and it's immoral. But what he wrote does not add up to a manifesto. It is not a blueprint for a new extremist political movement, much less the potential inspiration for a racist revolution. Anyone who claims that it is lying or hasn't read it. Instead, Gendron's letter is a rambling pastiche of slogans and internet memes, some of which flatly contradict one another. The document is not recognizably left-wing or right-wing. It's not really political at all. The document is crazy. It's the product of a diseased and organized mind. At one point, Gendron suggests that Fox News is part of some global conspiracy against him. He writes like the mental patient he is, disjointed, irrational, paranoid. Now, that's true, not that it makes the atrocities he committed easier to bear.
Funny how that not a manifesto cited Great Replacement multiple times. I wonder where he heard that. Gendron's writings also mention critical race theory, and of course refers to it as a Jewish conspiracy. I wonder where he heard that. I wonder which party has been pushing against CRT, and I wonder where these talking points about which side, the left or the right, has been pushing talking points that are ominously, at the very least, in grains of anti-Semitism just sprinkled over the top. When it comes to globalists and the other, I wonder where he heard that. I wonder where he heard about the pushing in CRT. Where do you think he heard about all that, right? Eric Schmidt, do you have an answer to this? Mike Parson, do you know where someone might have read on Twitter about CRT? I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest for the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient workers from the third world. Hey, Tucker, does that sound familiar? I wonder where do these people get this stuff? My goodness.
Biden has taken to telling his aides that he no longer recognizes the GOP, which he now views as an existential threat to the nation's democracy. End quote. People who disagree with Joe Biden, according to Joe Biden, are now a, quote, existential threat to the nation, like Al-Qaeda or climate change. A threat that by definition is so profound we must declare war upon it if we're to survive. Now, keep in mind, this threat that Biden is referring to is you. He's talking about his fellow Americans. No president has ever spoken like this, ever. Joe Biden does it regularly, and he's certain to do it again tomorrow. But most painful and destructive of all, Biden is likely to use racial wounds in order to make his point. There is no behavior worse than this. All race politics is bad, no matter what flavor.
So then Tucker doubles down on the rhetoric, specifically targeting people with almost a nod to folks who agree with Gendron. And I'll say the kinds of people who would publish the type of social media comments that I went over just yesterday. But wait. He's going to hedge on the message. So let's continue.
Those politics happen to be. No race politics is better than any other. All of it is poison.
Okay.
Race politics subsumes the individual into the group. It erases people. It dehumanizes them. Race politics elevates appearance over initiative and decency and all the other God-given qualities that makes every person of every color unique yet morally equal to every other person. And above all, race politics always makes us hate each other, and always in a very predictable way. So let's say you were to make identity politics mandatory in your...
And then he goes on about Rwanda in a really strange rant. I mean, and good, thank goodness. I actually thought, he meant he was calling for more violence. So now, it's apparently just against the president. But I guess I just misunderstood. But then he goes on to talk about Rwanda, and it just drones off from there. I'm sure a lot of Fox viewers probably also fell asleep at that point. It's good hedging, definitely good hedging. I was confused at first, but apparently I misunderstood the purpose of his message. But after toward the tail end of his rant regarding Rwanda, which again I'm certain that his Fox audience was super interested in hearing the comparison. Most of them, I'm sure, can find Rwanda on a map. Let's take a look at the end of his video here.
Rwandan citizens are citizens first, members of racial or tribal groups second, or not at all.
There you go.
Result, there have been no more genocides in Rwanda. And that could easily be the path forward for this country, too. There was only one answer to rising.
There we go. So American citizens first, and then of course, whatever, as he says it, whatever groups that you belong to. I sort of thought that was kind of how things worked anyway, but good for Tucker Carlson here, leading the charge, right?
Racial tension, and that's to de-escalate and do what we have done and tried to do for hundreds of years, which is work toward colorblind meritocracy and treat people as human beings created by God, rather than as faceless members of interest groups that might benefit some political party or other. We have a moral duty to do this because all people have equal moral value, no matter what they look like. All lives matter, period. That's not the determination of the U.S. government, that's the determination of God, and it's true. And most Americans already believe it. They would like to see a return to the American way of life, and the American way of life is meritocracy. Judge me by what I do, not by how I look, by the content of my character, not the color of my skin. We have a monument on the mall to this. And yet suddenly, every voice in power is leading us in the opposite direction. And what's the terminus of that journey? It's destruction. Everybody knows this. Only our leaders stand in the way of fixing a problem that is growing worse by the day.
Can't help but agree, but not exactly in the way that he would think. Oh, Tucker. Clearly, he doesn't watch my show. He might have missed what I covered in Lawton, Oklahoma, at the end of last week. So, yeah, about that. So Senate candidate for Arizona, Blake Masters, was on Ben Shapiro's podcast just last week. We've got the video. Let's take a look at Ben Shapiro. Again, this is pre-Buffalo. This was originally posted on Blake Masters' Twitter feed with the caption, Democrats want open borders so they can bring in, Democrats want open borders so they can bring in an amnesty tens of millions of illegal aliens. That's their electoral strategy. Not on my watch. Right. So where did Gendron get this stuff from? I can't even imagine. But let's take a listen here.
The Biden administration has done less than nothing. They're now talking about ending Title 42, which would basically allow the borders to be swamped. Their own DHS is estimating up to 18,000 people a day, maybe.
Oh, we're way off here.
Descending on the border, which of course completely destroys whatever. The Biden administration has done less than nothing. They're now talking about ending Title 42, which would basically allow the borders to be swamped. Their own DHS is estimating up to 18,000 people a day, maybe descending on the border, which of course completely destroys whatever semblance of order there is on the The Biden administration has done less than nothing. They're now talking about ending Title 42, which would basically allow the borders to be swamped. Their own DHS is estimating up to 18,000 people a day may be descending on the border, which of course completely destroys whatever semblance of order there is on the border. There isn't much there right now. So what do you make of the border situation?
I think it's literally criminal what Biden and the administration has done. You know, they swore to faithfully defend and uphold the laws of the United States. And that's not even like they're trying. It's not like they're trying and failing, right? That would be bad enough. Mere incompetence would be costly enough. But they just want this open border. This is their policy program. From the Democrats' perspective, they like it. It's good. It's 225,000 people coming across every month, not every year, every month. The amount of fentanyl that comes over every month is enough to kill every American twice over. Of course, most of the people brought over are trafficked by cartels. So there's a human slavery component. You know, the women and children are horribly abused, bona fide humanitarian crisis. And it's just bad. It's bad for everybody in Arizona. It's bad for the whole country. But this is the way Democrats like it. And again, I'm bold enough to admit the obvious, right? Which is that they're doing this.
Bold enough. It's bold enough to admit the obvious.
So that someday they can amnesty these people and make them voters who they expect to vote Democrat. This is an electoral strategy for the Democrats. Their policies are so bad and so unpopular that this is the only way they think they can shore up political power in the future.
Wow. Wow. And so this is Ben Shapiro just yesterday. Strangely enough, defending anti-Semitism, racism, and Tucker Carlson.
What the left is trying to do, as we discussed yesterday, is wrap all of this in the Great Replacement Theory bow. And now the Great Replacement Theory is something rather specific. And the attempt to broaden that out to include kind of normal discussions of demographic change in voting patterns, or discussions of immigration, or discussions of why it would be that, for example, Democrats in the United States seem so all-fired intent on allowing hundreds of thousands of people to cross the southern border illegally without policing them, and seem intent on amnestying a lot of those people, that wrapping that all together with the actual hardcore white supremacist great replacement theory, that's all kind of par for the course according to the mainstream media now. Now, here's the thing.
Let's go back here. Nick Fuentes, a white supremacist and Holocaust denier, tweeted his support for Carlson's comments, but said, oh, see if we can share this with the class here. Can you read that on your little smartphone there, folks? Nick Fuentes, a white supremacist and Holocaust denier, tweeted his support for Carlson's comments, but said the anchor should have gone further, criticizing him for suggesting that his remarks were not about race. Of course, replacement migration is obviously racial, and Tucker probably understands that, but is unwilling to say it, because maybe he would get fired if he did, Nick Fuentes wrote. But, yeah. I'm sorry, Ben Shapiro, I interrupted you. Go right ahead, sir.
Anti-Defamation League, which is now a left-wing outlet, right, run by Jonathan Greenblatt. It used to be.
Anti-Defamation League is a left-wing outlet. Right.
Defender against anti-Semitism. Now it basically parrots Democratic talking points. But the ADL has a rundown on what exactly the Great Replacement Theory is. And in their rundown on what the Great Replacement Theory is, here's what they say. They say the Great Replacement Theory has its roots in early 20th century French nationalism and books by French nationalist and author Maurice Barré. However, it was French writer and critic Renaud Camus who popularized the phrase for today's audiences when he published an essay titled Le Grand Remplacement, or the Great...
I think I said this yesterday. Good job on the pronunciation. I'm sure it's still wrong. I'll ask, but it definitely sounded better than mine.
Great Replacement in 2011. Camus believes native white Europeans are being replaced in their countries by non-white immigrants from Africa and the Middle East, and the end result will be the extinction of the white race. Now, notice that, right? It is about the extinction of the white race, right? This is what distinguishes the quote-unquote Great Replacement Theory from questions about voting patterns or cultural assimilation.
Hear Ben Shapiro out here, because he makes a very interesting point.
Notice that, right? It is about the extinction of the white race, right? This is what distinguishes the quote-unquote Great Replacement Theory from questions about voting patterns or cultural assimilation. If you are worried, for example, that people are going to come from countries and bring with them the values that those countries tend to uphold, that is not Great Replacement Theory. Great Replacement Theory is white people are inherently superior and they have to protect themselves. And the way to protect themselves is to prevent immigration because the racial stock of the country will somehow be degraded, right? That is the racist, white supremacist Great Replacement Theory. What the left has done is try to spin this into an argument about how if you are opposed to illegal immigration more generally, or if you have questions about immigration policy in the United States.
So, I mean, that's a very good point, and we're gonna get into that in just a second. So what he's saying is that the great replacement theory isn't what Tucker Carlson has been talking about on his show that he's catching so much heat from. It's more aligned with what Nick Fuentes is pushing that Tucker Carlson isn't saying on his show, right? It's reasonable. It's totally reasonable. Then why is Tucker Carlson talking about it with regard to immigration in the United States and calling it replacement? Why is Tucker Carlson specifically talking about Great Replacement Theory? Why is the right been talking about Great Replacement with regard to immigration from our southern border? It sounds like Ben Shapiro should be asking Tucker Carlson why he's got Great Replacement wrong.
Themselves is to prevent immigration because the racial stock of the country will somehow be degraded, right? That is the racist, white supremacist Great Replacement Theory. What the left has done is try to spin this into an argument about how if you are opposed to illegal immigration more generally, or if you have questions about immigration policy in the United States, if you think, for example, that it actually made a difference in 1965 when we changed our immigration laws to change the point of origin for mass immigration in the United States from Europe to south of the border, and that actually made a voting difference in the United States, which, by the way, it did. That if you notice that is Great Replacement Theory. That is not Great Replacement Theory. Great Replacement Theory is the idea that the white race is threatened. It sounds Hitlerian. It's the the 14 words that are usually spoken by actual white supremacists, right? There's an actual phrase, is we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, right? It is about the race. It is not about constitutional values or constitutional liberties or about the traditions of the West. It's not about any of that sort of stuff. It's about the race specifically.
So I guess there's a difference whenever he says that the focus in the shift of immigration from Europe to south of the border of the United States, even though there's a significant difference in ethnic. Dig in the hole, just dig the hole, dig in that hole. But you know, that's a nice hedge, I guess, in his explanation. But he does a really bad job of it. I can't even. Again, on the one hand, I mean that's like so many topics there. On the one hand, he's saying that this isn't great replacement in the way that Tucker Carlson says it, but Tucker Carlson calls it replacement. But at the same time, he says that it's white centric. But then backs that up to say that if your focus is on the shift from immigration coming from Europe to immigration coming from the south of the United States border, yeah, there's got to be a better way to hedge on that. That still sounds really, really bad the way you put that, bro. I'm just saying. But well, you know, we'll try and catch up with that. I believe in the next clip he does make a better attempt to hedge, or at least attempts to make an attempt to hedge. Let's take a look.
The shtick is that this is actually Trump's fault. It's the evil Republicans' fault, and that everybody here is actually mirroring the so-called great replacement theory. Right? They won't get away from the politics of fear. Now, here's the thing. If Democrats keep saying over and over, which they have done for several decades, that the quote-unquote browning of America is going to lead to greater progressivism in American politics. And then people say, well, I don't like greater progressivism in American politics. Maybe we need to restrict immigration. That doesn't make them nativist per se. It makes them anti-progressivism. Like, for example, I am very much in favor.
If they don't like the progressive politics, and then the left says the browning of America will increase the progressive movement, but they say we don't like progressives, therefore let's attack the browning of America. Okay.
Of a lot of legal immigration. I like legal immigration an awful lot. I
Clearly.
really do. I tend to be
like
pretty libertarian on immigration, except for cultural assimilation and education levels and people not taking advantage of welfare. You know, those are all issues that go to voting patterns. I've said before, I don't care about the browning of America. I don't care about the skin color of any American. What I do care about is the ideologies that people take into the voting booth with them, and then how their behaviors affect the broad writ future of the United States. But the idea is that if the left says we are going to bring in lots of immigrants in order to change the politics of the country, which the left does say this pretty regularly, right? They talk about how they want to bring in people from different places because they wish for America to become more progressive. They're not really hiding the ball here. If people oppose that, then this makes you a great replacement theory white supremacist, which is a wild conflation between two very separate ideas.
Yeah, I don't know that sounded the way that you thought that sounded. You know, so not a good day for right-wing media figures doing everything they can to defend ultra MAGA racism in just a no-win situation. I mean, surprisingly, Ben Shapiro even falling flat and failing horribly. I would give the guy more credit when it comes to hedging, but apparently even Ben Shapiro can't do it. There are so many ways this could have been spun to not cast even more light on ultra MAGA racism. I immediately think of when John McCain came out and, you know, snatched that microphone from racist Rachel after she called Obama an Arab. You know, when he said that, you know, they just disagree on policy and that he's a good family man. But in this political atmosphere, it's so much harder and too much to bear for these reactionaries to admit that they were wrong. It's just easier for them to just dig that hole deeper and just dig that trench wider. Unfortunately, the people who have been brainwashed by this nonsense for years now will continue to eat this up. And, you know, this close to the midterms, it's not looking like these gaffes, you know, if you want to call them that, are actually going to hurt them, you know, in that right. In fact, it may just entrench their beliefs, their base's beliefs, you know, even more. You know, folks who at this point, you know, it's going to be harder and harder to deprogram, certainly not en masse, right? For that one, need only look to Congresswoman Elise Stefanik and her Twitter feed, which was honestly one of the first things that I caught earlier today. Now, keep in mind, she made the statement on camera that she is ultra MAGA and proud of it. So let's take a look here. Oh, here we go. Very saddened to hear the tragic news of fellow New Yorkers in Buffalo. We are praying for the entire community and law enforcement at this time. Very saddened. And I got to think, who was that? Dr. Jorge Caballero for this one. I pulled this up last year. At Rep Stefanik invokes racist great replacement theory in campaign ad. Elise Stefanik, and this is from the American Independent. Elise Stefanik invokes racist great replacement theory in campaign ad. And who is it? Brian Tyler Cohen posted a couple of these also here. Elise Stefanik. Let's see if we can pull this up a little bit closer here. Radical Republicans are planning the most aggressive move yet, a permanent election insurrection, she called it. Their plan to grant amnesty to 11 million immigrants will overthrow our current electorate and create a permanent liberal majority in Washington. Yikes. Yikes. I think this was one by BTC. How low, Ms. Stefanik, pro-Trump, this is from the Daily Mail. Pro-Trump GOP rep Elise Stefanik is blasted by hometown newspaper editorial after she bought Facebook ads pushing great replacement theory, claiming white people are intentionally being replaced by immigrants. And this was a screenshot from the Daily Mail, of course, with the same post and or Twitter post in the headline there, per the article. Now, lastly, I want to go to Representative Rand Paul. Now, that previous article from Newsweek, and you know, to give Newsmax credit, apparently some of their talking heads haven't exactly been on with Tucker Carlson's considerations of replacement theory, and this was from the recount. This is Senator Rand Paul on John Bachman claiming that he has never heard of great replacement theory. Interesting.
Now, I want to get your thoughts, though, on the Democrats who keep pushing this great replacement theory as some sort of issue that we're all complicit with as Republicans.
You know, I'd never heard of it till news reports are coming out, and I'm not sure I still understand exactly what it is, but I know of no one in the Republican Party who's ever talked any such nonsense. And I think that when these shootings happen and we find we should look for solutions, and one of the things I keep coming back to is that there are a lot of warning signals.
So, shocked and appalled, not a good day for right-wing talking heads. You know, it's I'm at a loss for words here, folks. So I think we'll leave it at that. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate the people who are following me on Twitter at Chainsaw CCC. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I am very interested to hear your thoughts on these and other issues. If you enjoy what we're doing here in rural Missouri and want to support independent progressive media from the hills and wilderness of the Ozarks, consider going to patreon.com/chainsawccc and becoming a Patreon supporter. You can support independent media for as little as $3 per month. That's half the cost of a loaded tea per month. Thank you again, and we'll catch you on the flippity fling flong. Rock and roll.